jets and missiles.
The light bulbs are used for decorations and beautification of the truck. During the journey at night, they provide an exuberant view to the bystanders.
Truck art has continued to evolve, now more than ever. It continues to incorporate and fuse modern aesthetic elements and imagery with traditional, spiritual and folk ones.
Pakistan is home to some of the greatest mountains in the world, hosting 5 of the 14 highest peaks and some of the most bewildering and mystic landscapes. You have to travel 1500 miles to get mesmerized by the magic that is called Pakistan. From Karachi to K2, there are beaches, deserts, lakes, mountains and glaciers. One such place with some of the highest peaks and mighty glaciers is Gizar district in Gilgit-Baltistan. And we will be exploring Gizar in road and story. Every road has a story, and in this quest for finding the story of Gizar, I have been joined by a Canadian friend who is also a travel enthusiast.
I have traveled many places.
Assalamu alaikum, you're watching Views and News and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today, the interesting part is about the Afghan peace process, the ongoing situation, the kind of vacuum that seems will be there after the US withdrawal that is being done in a haste, in a hurry. Some believe that by the 4th of July, the US forces will vacate. And that exactly means 4 weeks from now. So you can well imagine the kind of settlement that we all are looking forward to. Has it been done? If not, what would be the overall fallout factor of this? How things will move forward? What sort of a solution needs to be there? Whether we're talking about an interim government or the current government is going to continue. And if that particular case, if the current government continues, what would be the role of the Taliban? The way the Afghan troops are surrendering to the Afghan Taliban, that is again something very interesting, and that is happening on various levels, at various levels and in various areas as well, especially in the eastern and southern part of Afghanistan. And then you talk about the number of posts that have been handed over to the Taliban by those soldiers. They are well over 100 so far. So things are changing on daily basis. As we say, the situation out there is very fluid. So today, the major area of discussion, before wasting any other time, I'll just read that out to you. It says Pakistan underscored the need for closer trilateral cooperation between Islamabad, Kabul and Beijing for peace and stability in the 4th session of China, Afghanistan, Pakistan Foreign Ministers Dialogue. So that's very encouraging. Shah Mahmood Qureshi Saab, the Foreign Minister, states that Pakistan has always strived to strengthen bonds with China and Afghanistan bilaterally and regionally. And we attach great importance to this dialogue, enhancing cooperation and coordination. We strongly believe peace, prosperity and economic development of our 3 countries are linked. Well said. Then Dr. Moeed Yusuf, the NSA says that the United States has assured us that Pakistan will not be made a scapegoat amidst the withdrawal from the Afghan region, but only time will tell, as history suggests otherwise. UN report says that the Taliban messaging remains uncompromising, and it shows no sign of reducing the level of violence in Afghanistan to facilitate peace negotiations with the government of Afghanistan and other Afghan stakeholders. And it further suggests that a significant part of the leadership of Al-Qaeda resides in the Afghan region. Large numbers of Al-Qaeda fighters and other foreign extremist elements aligned with the Taliban are located in various parts of Afghanistan. And Abdullah, the head of the High Council of National Reconciliation, says that there are serious differences. There is a need to find systematic solution for the questions that come from the public. So ultimately, the support of the people, this political system he's talking about, is saved from a possible collapse. So pretty much going on out there. Very interesting times ahead, especially the upcoming months of July and August in particular. What sort of a situation do we see? What exactly is going to happen? If that place is left the way people fear that there is no presence, but the Americans, they believe that in some form they will keep some sort of a contact there as well. But where will it lead? What exactly is going to happen? That's a million-dollar question. To talk about it, let me quickly introduce you to our panelists. In our studio, we have with us Shaukat Paracha Saab. Needs no introduction, is a senior journalist. Shaukat Saab is a known anchor person. Thank you so much, Paracha Saab, for your time.
My pleasure.
And on Skype, we have with us Amina Khan Saiba. She's the Director, Center for Afghanistan, Middle East and Africa. And she is joining us on Skype. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. And we have with us Brigadier Retired Salim Kamar Bhatt Saab, Senior Analyst. Brigadier Saab, what a pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much for your time as well. But Paracha Saab, a very interesting, in fact, when I was reading these details, I mean, there's this very interesting question there as well. Well, Moeed Pirzada Saab said that the history tells us otherwise, but this is what ideally should have been done. Hillary Clinton on the floor of the House very categorically mentioned that this is what we did and this is how we left Pakistan all alone. It seems the history is actually repeating itself, sir, and the consequences are yet to be seen. Prasa, your take, sir.
Thank you very much, and good evening to your viewers and the other two panelists. You said it's interesting times ahead. I say these are going to be the very dangerous times ahead. Not only for Afghanistan alone, and not only for the region alone, but for Pakistan as well. Whatever happens in Afghanistan, inside Afghanistan, that directly has implication for Pakistan. And this is what history has told us always. 70s, 80s, 90s, and during this decade, Pakistan has faced the brunt of the developments inside Afghanistan. Now, whatever the quotes you were telling, Dr. Abdullah say, with the help of the people, we will not allow sinking of this ship, And our foreign minister is saying with the support of Kabul. Which Kabul? Kabul
and what kind of a support do they have to
Kabul give? Of Dr. Ashraf Ghani, Kabul of Taliban, Kabul of Mullah Abdul Ghani brother, Kabul of Mullah Habatullah, which Kabul we are talking about? Because there is so much uncertainty about that, There is no doubt, that the mighty armed forces of the latest, modernized world, they could not, suppress Taliban inside Afghanistan for the last 20 years.
And the kind of military might, the kind
that's
of firepower
what I'm
there.
saying.
I mean, just look at that
latest modern weaponry could not kill them. But should we mean that the Taliban hiding in the mountains and in the hills, in the tunnels, they will come and take over Kabul, and then they will ensure smooth, governance and accommodating the other side, which is non-Taliban inside Afghanistan. Because 20 years there has been a civil society, media is there, women are working over there. Whether Taliban can accommodate the system that has prevailed over for the last 20 years, big questions. And when I say about implications for Pakistan, when 60% of the area that was out of the reach of President Ashraf Ghani or President Hamid Karzai, and 60% area was controlled virtually by Taliban.
That's correct.
All anti-Pakistan groups who used to attack Pakistani troops, many soldiers and officers, they got martyred because of the militants. They came from Afghanistan, they attacked the checkpost. Last week even you have seen in Waziristan.
It's a very regular feature, unfortunately.
So what about when Taliban take over Kabul, for example? What about these militants, Hizbul Ahrar, then TTP and others, and they have
IS,
close
I mean, you
align
talk about
about
Daesh,
IS,
you talk about
IS,
even the presence of Al-Qaeda, sir.
and then the nationalists like BLA, BRA, who've been hiding inside Afghanistan in collaboration with these militants, then is obviously CPAC, Balochistan and KP, these are direct implications for Pakistan. When Dr. Mueed Yusuf, when he says history tells us about otherwise, history is telling us about otherwise. If on 4th of July, they do not even pull out, but they pull out up to 9/11, it's not a 2 months difference,
Doesn't make any
so
difference.
what is the mechanism that they are leaving inside Afghanistan?
Sir, there is nothing.
Vacuum is
Now,
there.
this is exactly $1 million question. Let's take the same
Yeah.
point to the lady we have in our program. Ma'am, now the point is that, I mean, we believe that there should be a proper system. Everybody is talking about it. China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan should have a trilateral cooperation. Russians want peace in the region. The Americans, they always come up with certain kind of a statement. So the cases with the regional players. But ma'am, having said that, looking at the current situation, looking at the progress made so far, during the next 1 month, it seems that it is impossible to have something clear out of it, where we believe that, okay, this is what the Taliban are going to do, this is exactly what the government is going to do, this is how they are going to share the ministries for that matter, or there should be some sort of a plan in black and white. It seems that the link is totally missing, and 1 month, let's suppose even 1 month, or let's say 2 months from now, once the American forces vacate, it seems that the situation out there is going to be worse than I would say even 90s, and perhaps it is going to be worse than before the Afghan invasion, a civil war like situation. Everybody is going to take a bite of that poor deer like hyenas out there, ma'am, and that is going to be something absolutely dangerous for a country like Pakistan. Your take, ma'am.
I couldn't agree more. You see, the thing is that it's not enough just to garner support for the peace process. Much more needs to be done. And it's very unfortunate that the Americans are pushing the withdrawal. I mean, nearly 44% of the withdrawal apparently has already taken place.
Correct.
And this is very concerning. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, yeah. So this is very concerning, as you mentioned, for the region and particularly Pakistan. The fact is, I keep on saying time and again that the agreement was signed between two principal stakeholders. Kabul was conveniently left out for a number of reasons, and, let's not get into that. The onus, I personally believe, lies on the Americans. The Americans have to step in, and they need to put force on both sides to deliver, but at the same time, they need to push back and then let both sides compromise. And therefore, as I said, it's very convenient that you're having all these, initiatives. And yes, the trilateral between China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan is a welcoming development. It's been going on since 2017, but it cannot deliver peace. Peace can only be achieved if Kabul and the Taliban sit and they reach a workable compromise. Now, again, all of the mistrust lies in the agreement that was signed between the Americans and the Taliban. There was no talk of what kind of a future political setup Afghanistan is going to have. You've seen that President Ghani might not have the support of the masses, but he does have nuisance value, and he has created numerous hurdles time and again. Therefore, Kabul needs to be engaged. And again, what kind of a future political setup has been envisaged? The Taliban time and again keep on saying that they don't envisage a monopoly of power, that they believe in an inclusive and sometimes as an interim setup. But for me, I think it's just rhetoric, because they haven't really reached on what they exactly want. Similarly, President Ghani comes up with his sixth plan where he talks about having a constitution at the later stage. So honestly, it's a bit of a mess. Also, look at the state of the Doha talks. Nothing has been achieved. The fact that both sides cannot sit and even pass the initial stages just shows you, again, that the entire issue lies within Afghanistan. Unless and until both sides do not reach some sort of a workable compromise, there can be no peace. And look at the fact that, they haven't, the government in itself hasn't even been able to establish the state Supreme Council, again, because of internal differences. So right now, I think while the onus is being put on regional countries and particularly Pakistan to deliver peace, I think that's really naive of anyone to do so, particularly Kabul. And let me mention here that while there is interaction between Kabul and Islamabad, comments coming from certain members within the Ghani regime is certainly not helpful. And while one understands this level of desperation on Kabul side, it isn't helpful. It
All
is
right.
time, as difficult as it is time for the Afghans to take ownership. And yes, we
And
keep
well,
on
again,
talking
the question
about
is that how maybe the
yeah.
Taliban, they lack in numbers as far as the elections are concerned. That if proper, free, fair, and transparent elections are held, they might not win many seats. But when you
I
talk
think
about the street power, obviously that exists. So that is going to be the major tool for dictation. Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. But if you allow me, ma'am, let me also bring in Brigadier Saab. Now, Brigadier Saab, solutions, remedies for those issues and problems that exist in Afghanistan, or perhaps will soon be, as our NSS said, the history might repeat itself. Now, sir, a couple of points. Obviously, there is no military solution. That is what we have actually understood. Whatever has been done was pretty counterproductive in bringing in peace in Afghanistan initially. The power and the strength of the Taliban is very much visible. But having said that, now when we talk about the Uzbeks, Dostum group, very organized as far as the power is concerned, the number of troops he has a proper organized militia. You talk about people from Panjshir for that matter, whether it's Abdullah or the son of the deceased Ahmad Shah Massoud or his brother for that matter. So they have their own stake, and they have a lot of support coming in from so many other neighboring countries as well. And then the Pashtun element and so on and so forth. Now, sir, this seems to be an absolute recipe for perhaps a disaster out there, sir. Brigadier Saab, your take, sir. What do you see happening? How do you see the writing on the wall? Bold and clear, or it's still blurry?
Writing on the wall, Rehman Sahab, I agree with your assessment and my co-panelist. Everybody is saying the right thing because we, being Pakistani in the immediate neighborhood, have been watching what is happening in Afghanistan since 1979. We have seen end of former Soviet invasion, its fallout on Pakistan in the region. Then we have seen 2001 to 2021, 2 decades we have been observing and silently suffering, fighting this war on our soil. So nobody understands Afghanistan more than Pakistan because we are the major sufferers of any fallout. You all three are very right in assessing that writing on the wall is that Afghanistan is likely to slide back into a kind of civil war because the period that reconciliation between America and Taliban provided the time given to the Afghan government, sitting in Afghan government and the Taliban to reconcile and overcome their differences, that time has not been used. And the power struggle continued on the part of Ashraf Ghani as well as the Taliban. So there is no giving of any spaces by the two main stakeholders in Afghanistan. So in my opinion, the onus for bringing peace in Afghanistan has to start with the Afghan people. And when I say Afghan people, I mean the power brokers who are there, the Taliban, the
Sir, when you say Afghan people, are you hinting towards an election? Because election was recently held, whether it was, whatever you may use the adjective with it, but there was no participation from the people. Look at the overall number of people who actually came out and vote. Is it the right representation? That is another huge question mark. What level of corruption was there in the election, another huge question mark. And at the end of the day, whether it was the previous election or even the one which was held even prior to that one, okay, nobody was accepting who won. So eventually, once the CEO position was created, as if the Americans really were treating it like a agency of Coca-Cola or perhaps Pepsi, and at the same time, they had another issue in the other election, and then he was made the head of the council. What I'm saying is, sir, that once the Americans are not there, do you think the only thing which matters would be money coming in to support the future governments? Because their presence won't be there, so their you know, that authenticity, that kind of a vigor, that kind of a challenge or the power won't exist there, sir. Your take?
Rehman sir, I agree with you what you're saying, but let me say there won't be any dearth of money as far as putting the money in the wrong places. You know, I refer to the statement that I heard from Mr. Anthony Blinken, the Foreign Secretary, Secretary of State of America, giving an interview to BBC Radio, and he said that in the last 20 years he was accusing, actually obliquely hinting at Pakistan and China. They have been free riders. We have been spending money, we have been suffering human losses, and the regional countries were just enjoying, sitting and enjoying, which was a misstatement in my opinion. Actually, it was the American invasion which has created this mayhem in Afghanistan and in the neighborhood. But who knows better than us that Afghanistan is actually a battlefield for launching of the proxies. So all the regional countries, whether I won't name the countries for diplomatic reasons, but no country which is bordering Afghanistan or not even bordering Afghanistan, our eastern neighbor is most active one. So Blinken was hinting at that they are withdrawing troops from Afghanistan, but they are not abandoning Afghanistan. They will continue to provide the money where it is needed, referring to Afghan National Security Forces. But may I hint at that there are reports that in the last over a year, they have been recruiting the fighters, they have been recruiting the intelligence operators from within Afghanistan. So perhaps privatization of war in Afghanistan is something that is a new buzzword that we'll soon start hearing, which is not there in the media yet. But I had written about it 2 years ago, the perils of privatization of war in Afghanistan, when Dyncourt and Z, they were prevailing upon Mr. Trump that the war should be handed over to them if US wanted to exit. So now, after review of the agreement that Trump made, Biden has finally announced, that Madam was rightly pointing out, that they may exit by Independence Day, that is 4th of July, and much before September. So this hasty withdrawal will further accentuate the problem.
Exactly, they're just withdrawing, sir. They're withdrawing, but that, I mean, you know, exactly. It seems like an uncooked steak or something. You know, you need to give it time. They never gave time. So either you eat it raw or you cook it yourself. Now the question is, are we in a position to cook it further? Is Pakistan, because Prachi Sahab, if you look at the history, sir, couple of very important areas I really would like to throw light on. One is the last time when the Taliban took over, let's call it a hostile taking over of Afghanistan. Sir, there were 3 countries immediately that accepted: Saudi Arabia, UAE, Pakistan. Finance was coming in, rather pouring in. So they had some sort of a stability and things started improving. Because they had the power, they had the gun, and they had the support. But now, sir, having said that, things have changed on ground, as we all know. The US withdrawal, number one. Who is going to finance the overall setup? Because the Afghan economy, you know better than I do what kind of economy that is. How will this entire mess will be handled? The role of various countries, the role of the internal characters and the non-state actors. I mean, it seems like...
Had there been a mechanism of handling the mess, then I'm sure we will not have been talking about it, that there is going to be a crisis.
Time is short,
it's not even a month. There is no mechanism, you know. There is no mechanism at all, you see. You are talking about the finances. Finances are not a problem. China is willing to contribute massively for the development of Afghanistan. But whether, as Brigadier Saab has rightly pointed out, the counter forces, whether they would like China to have a hegemony over there, because there are there are $2-3 trillion of reserves, mineral reserves over there.
Carbohydrates.
Why
perhaps lithium, let's put it this way.
Why ignore it, you know? So what about the immediate neighbors of Afghanistan who also want peace there, who also want stability there, like Pakistan. You know, if I talk in very clear and simple terms, you know, there will be war, civil war, whatever you like to say, you know. And obviously, the Syrian government at the moment, or its national, defense forces, they will not be able to withstand the violence, because if NATO forces or ISAF forces, as we talked earlier, if they could not withstand the violence,
absolutely,
how could these Afghan national defense forces they can withstand? But having said that, Taliban,
neither they're prepared nor they had the will.
Taliban can destroy everything. But would they be able to rule the minds and hearts of Afghanistan? They do not have this culture. The culture of violence has been, you know, a hallmark of the Afghan history. So will that be repeated? And the problem for Pakistan that I'm talking about is, whatever the violence will be there, whatever the Syrian government or the parties which are now in the power, whatever they will be pushed, the allegation will be on Pakistan, that Pakistan has been supporting this network or that network, and now Pakistan,
we have said we have no favorites, and honestly we do not have any favorites.
I tell you, the policy, even if Pakistan gives a blank check, Pakistan presents a written text that whosoever fights in Afghanistan, whether they kill each other, whether they hug each other, that's their internal matter. This is going to be the policy of the government of Pakistan, but the detractors will never accept it, you know. They will again point out finger towards Pakistan that look.
So the chaos or the mess left behind by the Americans would again be blamed on Pakistan, and we would be pushed into that again, that mantra, do more.
Even in next 2 months,
all right,
this fencing will be complete.
Will it make any difference, Pracha Saab?
It will make a difference. It will make a lot of difference.
People are saying that there's going to be a huge refugee crisis in Pakistan, just like in 1971, if a civil war-like situation erupts.
I tell you, you know, where the poor people can go.
Nowhere else.
Then how can you stop them?
Are we prepared then?
Should we shoot them?
We should have a counter contingency plan.
No, should Pakistan shoot them if there is a? I remember once, you know, at one of the crossings, you know, there was a trumpet because everyone wanted to rush towards Pakistan, and many people were killed. It's a matter of just 2-3 months back, you know.
These are the peaceful times.
And peaceful times, plus all those people, they get a biometric visa, etc., etc. But when influx of refugees, they will be trying to, you know, enter Pakistan. How could you stop it? Would you fire at them? And if you fire at them, 3 million are already sitting there inside Pakistan. What would be their reaction? So hard times for Pakistan.
Again, let's take the same point, ma'am, towards the lady we have in our program. Ma'am, is it like a checkmate kind of a situation? Like, is a king in danger? Because the point is that it seems that nothing is working out there, ma'am. And honestly speaking, it seems it is true when people say that the Afghan nation, they are in peace when they are at war.
Yes, before I get to that point, let me just mention that Pracha Saab said that China is willing to, you know, fund or contribute financially. Of course it is, but believe me, it is not interested in inheriting the legacy of the Americans or the mess the Americans have left behind. China will invest, but it will want its returns, and it's not going to squander its money away like the Americans have. So this is a big question mark, and therefore the Afghans really need to think about this. While the Europeans and the Americans have said that they will continue to provide assistance, this is something that really needs to be looked into, and I think, you know, it's easier said than done. Yes, the situation in Afghanistan is getting, excuse me, from bad to worse. And I think it's really critical, again, for regional countries, particularly those countries that share an immediate border with Afghanistan, to somewhat prepare themselves for what is coming up, because I think what we can see is we are not going to see any sort of an agreement signed between these two, parties, that is the Taliban and Kabul. The time frame is extremely short, and one hopes that the Americans' better sense will prevail and they will prolong their exit, and it'll be more measured. But we don't see this happening. Therefore, yes, you have border measures and mechanisms, but you will not be able to stop the refugees from the influx of refugees. They're not going to use the regular border. The border is porous, and they're going to find any way to cross to get salvage or seek refuge, particularly if a civil war does break out in Afghanistan. I think, again, what regional countries and the regional consensus should be to put a little more pressure on both sides, that is the Afghans and Kabul, but particularly again on the Americans, since the Americans were the ones that signed the agreement with the Taliban, and they're the ones that are exiting. And I have to say, in a very haphazard and hasty manner, because look at the situation in Afghanistan. Yes, you have a government, but then you've got a party that you have signed an agreement with and you have given them legitimization. Then you've got the
Exactly.
same party that is continuing with violence. And it is very convenient that the Taliban have stopped attacking American forces, but at the end of the day, Afghan national security forces are dying. So again, I feel that the international community needs to be made responsible. And again, by international community, I mean the Americans. It is as simple as that. Pakistan and Iran have suffered the most if you look at the 80s, and Pakistan is certainly not in a position to accommodate refugees, let alone the other consequences that we will face. The possible reinsurgence of terrorist groups. You've got the ISKP once again that has begun to flourish because it is taking the vacuum that is being created, it is taking advantage. So, these are really testing times, and I think, again, it is time for regional consensus, for the region to get together and put pressure on the Americans. There is no other way.
Ma'am, also throw light on another aspect, because you can look at it, or look at the overall situation from various angles. I mean, from various approaches. One is very interesting, and that is, like, let's suppose there's a civil war-like situation. The Taliban, they have the power, they have the support, and they eventually take over Kabul. They have a presence in so many other areas as well. A couple of warlords also join hands with them. But having said that, though they have very deep historical differences with the people from Panjshir, or as we call them, the Northern Alliance, or a couple of other groups as well. What about the future of these splinter groups of Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Hizbul-Ehrar, Tehreek-ul-Ehrar for that matter, and this Sajna group, or Sharia Afridi group for that matter, and IS, Daesh, Al-Qaeda, or even those characters? If you remember, Hamid Karzai, the former president, used to always talk about the mystery helicopters. So obviously those mystery helicopters were not bringing in some chilled drinks perhaps from the Middle East, they were bringing in people. So that kind of a scenario, that mess, what sort of a contingency plan do you think Pakistan should have?
Again, it is very difficult for Pakistan to manage this, but the longer the war or the turmoil continues, you will be providing, as in Afghanistan will continue to provide space to these elements to operate. And again here, I think the best Pakistan can do is, yes, take stricter border initiatives, and again push for a regional consensus and push both sides to enter into some sort of an agreement. This is going to be a long-term mess, and it is time. The region needs to protect itself. The Americans will conveniently leave. But I think things are a little different right now because you've got China on board, and again, China is very, very, very concerned about the possible spread into its Xinjiang province and the resurgence of the ETIM. Similarly, you have Russia, who has equal worries regarding the ISKP, and for that matter, Iran. So I think there is a regional consensus, and maybe there can be a regional mechanism. But again, at the end of the day, the onus is on putting as much pressure as possible on all three sides, that is America, the Taliban, and Kabul, to enter some sort of an agreement. Otherwise, we're going to see a continuation of this. And I am concerned about these terrorist groups, but I'm more concerned about the fact that political divisions within Kabul, I think that's the biggest hurdle. And I personally feel that the
Everybody
Taliban have,
is thirsty
let me just, sorry,
for the power.
just one point here. The Taliban have been engaging, by the way, with all the different other political factions in Afghanistan, and we saw this time and again in the Moscow process. The biggest hurdle at the moment is the regime in Kabul that is not willing to budge. And here I again say that this is a historic opportunity for President Ghani if he's really committed to peace, to step down and push for this interim inclusive setup, which is a relatively workable, mechanism to push this process forward.
But the question again, is he going to dig this grave himself? For himself? I mean, that is going to be again a problem. But perhaps he is not that smart. But Saab, another important area, I mean, if you look at the recent statement of the National Security Advisor, Mohd Yusuf Saab, first he thought that, let's see whether the Americans make Pakistan a scapegoat or not. But sir, another important statement that he added, I'll read it out. He says that it's too early to predict whether the US will stick to their words. Too early? I mean, they are almost leaving half of their, withdrawal. It's been completed. Perhaps 4 weeks to 6 weeks, there won't be any soldiers present inside the Afghan territory. What are we thinking? Our National Security Advisor is still confused, I guess, isn't he?
I wouldn't dare call him confused. I think he's very clear-headed. He has been.
So these are the words. I mean, too early to predict. When are we going to predict? We are sitting here and predicting, sir.
Right. Let me see what I want to say. Faisal, I am a ground soldier. I fought on the Afghanistan border in 84, 85, 86 when the Russians were there. I fought along the Afghan border in 2002, 3, 4, 5. I've been chief of operations there, so I've been dealing with the realities. So the fiction, the mysteries don't impress me much. That lie in the academic world, not with me. My fears are real and I know how to deal with the fears and to mitigate the fears and to wipe them off. Pakistan has two major concerns. One is the influx of refugees if the civil war happens, which is more likely, as my co-panelists are rightly pointing out, you yourself are predicting that. We should rather stop forecasting about the conduct and the intent and behavior of the US about Pakistan. We should rather be now discussing what do we need to do immediately. We need to buckle up. We need the Pakistani-Afghanistani border is not as porous as it used to be 20 years ago. We made a plan in 2002. We started, we wanted to do fencing. We have been, alhamdulillah, taken a long time, but we have been, the major part of Pakistan-Afghanistan border has been fenced. That needs to be mined. That needs to be electrified. That needs to be totally blocked so that the influx of the refugees does not bother Pakistan as it bothered in mid-70s and when the US came in. Second major fear that Pakistan has is the use of the proxies like TTP, BLA, BRA, all Al-Qaeda, splinter groups, Islamic State. They're all proxies, terrorist organization playing in the hands of others. And so how to stop them? First, you have to stop the floodgate that, alhamdulillah, we have been able to do. Pakistan is manning its border effectively. Of course, there are incidents of cross-border terrorism, but Pakistan has to show more resolve. Pakistan has to ultimately will have to use more force. I think we have been overpleasing Ashraf Ghani. Mr. Imran Khan went there. Ashraf Ghani came to Pakistan. Army Chief Staff went to Afghanistan a number of times. We have been trying to please him, trying to convince him that instead of accusing Pakistan that he does not stop doing, including his administration, home and abroad, they keep venom spitting on Pakistan. So let's stop bothering about them and let's make our own home more stronger from inside. Pakistan itself is suffering from political polarization. So first we need to develop our own consensus, political consensus. that the factor of ethnicity and religion that Afghans have been exploiting in order to cross over to Pakistan, and ultimately they are the faction of them become the proxies in the hands of the enemies of Pakistan. So we must not allow any refugees crossing over to Pakistan. Rather, we should be pushing out what we already have. That has always been my take for the last 20 years in my official capacity and my private capacity. So this is what we need to do. Pakistan needs to develop the consensus within parliament about Afghanistan. We must not get exploited in the name of religion or ethnicity at all. Let me draw your attention that other neighboring countries of Afghanistan like Iran, like Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, they do not allow any cross-border movement. The moment they put their foot on their soil, they shoot them. Pakistan ultimately will have to do that. Otherwise, you will have to see the repeat of last 20 years and last 40 years. So that has already hurt us physically and economically much. No other country has been economically hurt as much as Pakistan
Obviously,
has been
sir,
hurt. So
economics
let the history
matters.
not repeat itself.
All right. So just 1 minute comment, and let me also put a question here, sir. Taliban still closely tied to Al-Qaeda, says a UN report, linking the Taliban with the Al-Qaeda, and this is from the Tolu News, and you know what Tolu News is all about. So, sir, if that is the kind of perceptions the Americans have, then why are we looking for peace in the region?
So that's exactly what I was trying to respond to Ms. Khan when she emphasizes that American will fund. Why should American fund? Why should American be their taxpayer? They will be questioning that those who killed us, you are funding them because Taliban are not going to stop less than taking over entire Afghanistan.
There you go, sir.
The moment they do it, the world will distance itself. That they are
and they won't be having the Saudi and the UAE support.
Exactly,
then,
they are going to be a
had.
breeding ground for militancy or for extremism, whatever. They know how to invent these innovative terminologies.
Sir, the West is known for developing the narratives. Simple as that. War on terror, never heard of that. Now we know. So, weapons of mass destruction, never heard of it.
No money
now
will be there until if their backed people mean Dr. Abdullah or Dr. Ashraf Ghani or Hamid Karzai or others, from the north, they will be there. Taliban are not in any mood of accommodating them.
Simple as that. So anyway, Faisal Saab, thank you so much for your presence. And Brigadier Saab, was a pleasure having you, sir. Thank you so much for your participation as well. And it's always great to have you in the show. Amina Khan Saiba, it was a pleasure to have you as well. And that's all we have for this hour. But honestly speaking, it seems that, 2001, year 2001, October, perhaps it was 7th, 8th, if I'm not wrong, was the day when the Afghan region was attacked by the American forces. Exactly after 2 decades, 20 years, they are vacating. Are we talking about another war for another 20 years now? Because 20 seems to be the magical number, unfortunately, out there. But let's hope and pray that things do get settled down. And I think a lot of political will is perhaps needed in this particular hour. Anyway, I'll see you again. Till then, you take great care of yourself. Have a great weekend. Look after yourself. Stay safe. Khuda Hafiz.